Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Christmas Eve. I'm Brittany Nobles here for Roland, and here's what's coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. A Black Amazon delivery driver in North Carolina is demanding that the white man who shot at her and her son face attempted murder charges. We'll talk to her about what happened before the bullets started flying. And the father who killed a Kentucky State University student will not be charged with murder after a grand jury accepted his claims of self-defense. Plus, in Georgia, a church has gone beyond spreading holiday cheer. It paid off over $1 million in medical debt for hundreds of families. The pastor will join us tonight to explain their motivations. And the Supreme Court has blocked the deployment of National Guard troops in Chicago, halting Trump's efforts to use federalized troops for immigration enforcement. And in our Roland Martin Book Club segment, Roland sits down with Dr. Joseph Jones, the author of Black, Not Historically Black, Towards the Pan-Black College and University, which examines leadership, miseducation, culture, sustainability, respect, and social justice within these institutions. You certainly do not want to miss that conversation. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, Rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
Well, a North Carolina homeowner is facing felony charges after allegedly opening fire on an Amazon delivery driver and her teenage son, all because they accidentally pulled into the wrong driveway on the night of December 14th. Thankfully, no one was physically hurt. 23-year-old Sidney Pittman is charged with firing into an occupied vehicle. He's currently out on a $200,000 bond and is due back in court on January 8th. The sheriff's office is also reviewing possible racist social media posts, which could lead to additional charges. That delivery driver, Tashika Trimble, and civil rights activist John Burnett, they join us now. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. Tramika, we'll start with you. Can you walk us through what happened?
I can't hear.
Can you maybe?
I can't hear.
Okay, John, can you hear John? John?
Yes, I can.
You can. Okay. Could you walk us through what's happened?
Yes, I sure will. And we want to thank you for being on your show. And we appreciate all that Roland Martin is doing for our community. It feels that on last Sunday, Miss Tashika, who's on with us now, I think she's with her family in the background. Her and her son was delivering a package, an Amazon package. They pulled into the driveway of what they thought was the home of the individual that they were delivering the package for. And then the process of doing that, they didn't get out the car. They just kind of seen this white male figure with a ponytail just staring at them. So her son, of course, said, "Mom, I don't think this is the right place." So they back up, they go to the house next door, and that was the actual address. They were on a very dark street in a city called Ellaby, North Carolina, not far from Rockingham, North Carolina, which is probably the most popular city around there. And as they were driving back out, driving out of the driveway, backing out of the driveway rather, they were just driving down the road, and they didn't get far until they heard a big loud noise. And apparently this individual had shot a shotgun in the back of the car. They heard a big boom and a bunch of sprinkles. I think that was the bullet shells that was hitting the car. Miss Tashika is licensed to carry, so she was able to, she's getting ready to get a weapon, and her son said, "Mom, just pull off." So as she's pulling off, they go, of course, call the police. Police come back, long story short, and they asked the young man, "Did he do it?" He said, "Yes." They asked him why, ma'am, and he literally said, "I don't know." So I don't know if it's the Trump cloud that's sprinkling hate around this country, but they did lock him up with a $200,000 bond. Unfortunately, almost within a day or so, he was released out on bond. And so our civil rights organization, True Healing Under God, we're actually went down, we staged a press conference, speaking out about our concerns. We talked to a detective, and we're trying to upgrade it to ethnic intimidation. That's a charge that a lot of people of color may not know. I've gotten 2 people last year charged with that, a white male and a white female. And the second charge we're pushing for is, of course, the hate crime. Why? Because he was in the road, and that's state governed, which is also, federally supported. And just the mere fact that when he got out of jail, I want to give you this real quick. When he got out of jail, he posted something online that said that he shot a cold colored, is what he used, the words that he used, COAL. He was having a conversation with someone via text. The individual saying, "Man, why did they spend all this money on you to get out?" He starts laughing, and he told him, "You're going to have a cold Christmas." And he said, "I shot a cold colored," is his words. So we're using this screenshot that we have. We're going to share it with you all if you'd like to share it, and let the community know that we're going to tolerate, this individual, 23 years old. I think he has some prior charges, just shooting in a random car. Her son or her could have been killed. And so we addressed it immediately, and we're pushing. We've met with the DA, talked to her. She's been very supportive, and we've talked to a local detective. So we're definitely trying to get this charge upgraded, only to send a message that you just can't shoot into an Amazon driver's car for no reason at all.
Were you able to find any other social media posts?
No, but I'm going to be asking my attorney to do what we call a computer forensic, which is looking at past history. I would love to have his cell phone right now, because I'm sure there'll be a lot of, racially charged comments inside of his phone. He's now since gotten a little quiet. We had about 60 people at our press conference. Ms. Tashika has a large family, and we're looking forward to definitely getting justice for her.
I know Tashika is standing by with all of her sisters tonight, and I know that she really wants to tell her story, and we would certainly like for her to tell her story. Tell us how you guys got connected.
We're probably the only full-time civil rights organization in the Carolinas. So we get about 40 to 50 calls a week, literally. So a lot of people begin to tag her with my name on social media. That is John C. Barnett, Roman numeral 3. And she just called me. I met with her the same day. And I'm not a stranger to this type of situation. My attorney, Malik Zulu Shabazz, and myself went to Mississippi last year to fight for Michael Jenkins, who was shot in the mouth by a deputy. He actually lived. The bullet came out of his neck. We sent these 6 officers to prison for 135 years, made history in Mississippi. And Mr. Jenkins just received a settlement of $2.5 million. But that is probably the most, at the top of my list, most hate-filled case that me and my attorney, Malik Shabazz, has ever had. So I just put in the blueprint. 1961, Malcolm X had stated that the Black woman is the most unprotected and most disrespected human on earth. And I think it's now time in our community that Black men begin to stand up and take up for our Black women and our Black babies as well.
Tell us what happens next in this case in North Carolina.
We met with the detective, and he's considering more charges. But I'm kind of hesitant whether or not he's going to do that. So we're just waiting for that paperwork to be transferred over to the DA's office. And we have court in Richmond County on January 7th, I believe, the 7th or 8th. Don't quote me on that. We then are going to initiate more civil rights assistance by encouraging a lot of people to come to court, both black and white, is supporting our efforts to come to court dressed in black on that particular court date. I think it's the 8th, actually. And we're going to be back in Richmond County again to, let the judge know that we're supporting her efforts.
Yeah, tell us about the support. Tell us about what kind of impact you think that will have for everybody to show up and all be wearing black.
Well, she's very excited that Roland Martin's show called. But it's been a lot of feedback. My attorney reached out to us. Our Facebook page press conference is close to almost 25,000 views. So social media has really helped us a lot. And it's one of those small little cities that don't get a lot of coverage. So it's really right now the talk of the town. But Facebook is good to use. But I tell people all the time, I work with about 30 lawyers across the country in collaboration with them. Even my big brother, Attorney Ben Crum. But I tell people all the time, Facebook has never given me a lawyer. They've never assisted in getting Miss Tashika and her son counseling, which they have now. She told me she was nervous because, and I got to tell you this, he lives about 6 minutes from her house, and yet he's out on bond. And I was telling the detective, I hope he's got an ankle monitor on, and he was supposed to get back with us and let us know. But that's the most disturbing thing about this. He said he had a $200,000 bond. The family probably paid $10,000 or $20,000 to get him out for Christmas. But to know that he lives about 6 minutes from her house is very disturbing. And so she's had some trouble nights not sleeping, not knowing, what he's going to do next. So hopefully we'll get him on an ankle monitor soon or back in jail. But I'm really pushing for the hate crime charges.
And do you think that you will actually get these hate crime charges?
I think so. I worked in collaboration with the Ahmaud Arbery case. And I realized in that case, when Ahmaud Arbery was shot by two white males down in Brunswick, Georgia, I went down there for the protest. Actually, the night that I got down there, the father and the son got locked up. I realized that if he had gotten shot in the yard, it would have been probably a state-oriented charge. Ahmaud Arbery was shot in the road, which made it a federal charge, which gave them federal charges, rather. And so this guy came out of his house, out of his yard, and in the road. And now when we look at this racist post that he's made, I'm just encouraging the FBI to intertwine the two and go forth with a hate charge. And not only that, to send a message. I mean, at best, he didn't even get attempted murder. He got shooting in a vehicle. And there's another black male in Richmond County that, shot in somebody's house, and he's got attempted murder charges. So when you shoot somebody in a car, in particular a moving car, that's Class D, that's a Class D felon, which means he should have right now, let alone the hate crime, he should have 2 attempted murder charges for shooting in a vehicle. Very, very disturbing. And they let him slide a little bit, for him to be home for Christmas. My goal is to get him back in jail ASAP.
Mr. Burnett, we understand that Ms. Trimble cannot hear me. Are you able to communicate with her? Can she hear you?
Yes, I can. I think she's texted me just now.
Ask her if she can hear you.
Okay, there she is. Can you hear us? Mr. Chica, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear.
Okay, good.
Ask her
Thanks.
to tell us her story. How is she feeling right now?
I'm a little overwhelmed. Really don't want to go anywhere. I don't know. It's just a lot going on in my head right now.
I know that we try to walk through your story, but only you can tell your story. So I want you to tell me, what happened that night when your son and you were out delivering the packages.
Okay. Me and my son, we turned on a street. It was dark, and the navigation led us to a house. So when I pulled in, it was the only house on that street that was lit up. So I said, okay, this must be the right house. We didn't see any numbers. So I was finna get out the car, and my son was like, Mama, hold on, wait, look how they looking at us, because we can see through their house because their light was on. It was a female and a male at the door at that time. And I was like, let me get out so they'll know that I got a packet for them. And my son was like, no, Mom, look how they look. So I looked. I said, well, tell them I got a package, and ask them, is this their address that was on the packet? So my son stuck his head out the window and he waved and he asked them those questions. They didn't reply. They didn't say anything. Only thing they was doing was like talking amongst each other and looking back. So I was like, well, let me get out and show them the packet. And my son was like, no, Mom, get out the people's yard. So I was like, well, okay. So I began to back out, and I started the way that the navigation had me going at the beginning. But then it rerouted me to turn around and go back. So I said, well, I ain't going back to that house. If we don't find it, it's all right. So we kept going, and my son and I was like, oh, here go the number on this mailbox. So we pulled in. So I was like, dang, that was the wrong house. I wasn't thinking about them or thinking anything was going to happen. I was just doing my job. So my son was like, Mom, I'm gonna get out. So he got out and he scanned the packet, did the whole process, putting the packet on the porch. We have to take a picture of it. He had a good 3 to 5 minutes, before he got back in the car. So as I began to back out, I had my lights on and I had my windows down so I can see, because of course it was dark. I pull in the road, and as soon as I put my car in drive, and as soon as I was in the middle of asking my son what address is next, we hear a shot. Then we hear little pricks hitting the car. I duck. I grab my gun and look left and right because, of course, I carry. Because I didn't know which way to look or who was shooting at that time. And my son was like, no, Mama, he's shooting. Go. So I just took off, and he called 911. And I told him, let them know I'm not stopping anywhere till I get to somewhere I feel safe. And that was a nearby convenience store.
Why was it important for you to speak out about what happened to you?
Because I feel like it's not fair. 2 lives was in that car, and he only has 2 charges. When I've seen people doing the same thing, or even worse, and they have several charges, including attempted murder charge. Nobody don't even have to be in the car or home if somebody shot in it, and they would still charge them with those crimes. And I feel like, yes, he do have those 2 charges that fit, but he should have a lot more than what he has, because like I said, me and my son was in that car.
I know your son right now is at work. That's why he's not beside you right now, but how's he doing?
He's a smart kid, so he's kind of, unless you ask him something, then he'll come out with it, but he kind of keeps stuff bottled up. Yeah, and he's just trying to be strong. Like he trying not to show so much emotion. Most men don't like to show emotion in front of people. They kind of hide away and come out like everything's okay. But it's like he just want to keep moving to not think about it.
Yeah. And as you guys began your investigation and started doing some digging, I understand there were some social media posts. How are you feeling about what you saw online in reference to what happened to you?
It's just a lot. I'm just happy me and my son are okay, that we can tell everybody our story. Of course, we're going to have good and some negative about it, but we're here to tell it. And nobody can tell my story how I can tell my story because I was there. I'm just happy nobody hurt. Like, I can get a replaceable car, but our lives do matter. And he needs to be held accountable for what he done, because he has no reason why he did it. There's no reason why.
And keep in mind, you got to realize when he was locked up, you're looking at the fact that within an hour after he got out of jail, that post was sent to Mr. Chico. That's, she found it an hour later after he was, out of jail, which lets you know there's no remorse in this individual. And that's why we're pushing very heavy for some extreme charges, in particular, the 2 attempted murder charges.
As we begin to wrap up, is there anything that you'd like to say? Any last words?
I just thank everybody for their support, their concern. They want to know my story. They help, whether it's a text, I'm sorry it happened to you. Do you need to talk? Anything. I just thank everybody because this is a hard time right now. I don't get scared easily, but this scared me. And it's like when stuff like this happen, we need somebody by our side. We need somebody to let us know that it's okay. I'm here. I'm gonna be here with you. I'm gonna be right here by your side because everybody don't have that support. And I'm just happy for everybody that I know and people I don't know. The text, I'm just grateful.
And as a sign of support for his son on last night, from everything he went through, our organization, True Healing Under God, we actually took them to their very first Charlotte Hornets NBA game last night to kind of calm things down. So his son truly enjoyed it. He's a great money management type guy. He got his little Chick-fil-A sandwich and, also a lot of other things. But we took him out last night to just kind of let them know that we support them and just to kind of calm, all the stress that they've been dealing with. So I'm thankful that they're feeling a little bit better. They're also, again, as I told you, in counseling because, to know that somebody got shot at. I told Mr. Sheikah that it takes 9 seconds to remember something good in your life, but it takes 2 to 3 seconds to remember something bad. Probably for the rest of his life, unless he gets Alzheimer's, God forbid, he's gonna remember someone shooting at me at the age of 16. Mr. Sheikah, give her your court date. We want to encourage people to come out on your court date. You can tell her your court date.
Yes. Why I got this court date is because it was on his papers. No one has given me a court date, but I know he does come to court January the 8th at the Richmond County Courthouse.
And you're asking for people to show up in all black. We want to thank you guys, both of you, and your support team, your sisters behind you. Thank you for coming on here and for sharing your story. We're glad you're safe, and Merry Christmas.
Thank you very much. Tell Mr. Morton I said hello.
I will.
No doubt.
All right, well, we have so much more coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered here on the Black Star Network. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Are you ready for the holidays? This week on A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie, we're talking about all things anxiety and the holidays, whether it's performance anxiety, presence versus presence, making certain that everybody in your space understands the boundaries and how to respect your home. This week, we're talking about those things that will allow you to have a peaceful holiday season.
It really is not about perfection. It's really about the house feeling warm and cozy and peaceful.
You don't have to like everybody, but what you can do is be cordial in those environments.
That's all this week on A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie here on Black Star Network.
They said the quiet part out loud. Black votes are a threat, so they erased them. After the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act in 2013, Republican legislatures moved fast. New voter ID laws, polling place shutdowns, purges of black voters from the rolls. Trump's Justice Department didn't stop it, they joined in. In 2018, his DOJ backed Ohio's voter purge system, a scheme that disproportionately erased black voters. Their goal, erase black votes and political power. Yeah, that happened. These are the kinds of stories that we cover every day on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Subscribe on YouTube and download the Black Star Network app. Support fact-based independent journalism that centers African Americans and the issues that matter to our community.
In this country right now, you have people get up in the morning and the only thing they can think about is how many people they can hurt, and they got the power. That's the time for mourning.
For better or worse, what makes America special, it's that legal system that's supposed to protect minorities from the tyranny of the majority.
We are at a point of a moral emergency. We must raise a voice of outrage. We must raise a voice of compassion. And we must raise a voice of unity.
We are not in a crisis of party versus party. We are in a crisis of civilization, a human rights crisis, and a crisis of democracy itself. And guess what? You've been chosen to make sure that those that would destroy, those that would hate, don't have the final say, and they don't ultimately win.
Well, a grand jury in Kentucky has decided not to indict the man accused of a deadly shooting that occurred December 9th at Kentucky State University, a historically black college in Frankfort. The jurors issued a no true bill in the case of 48-year-old Jacob Bard. A no true bill indicates that the jurors found the prosecutors did not provide enough evidence to establish probable cause for moving forward with murder and assault charges. Bard, he's the father of a KSU student and claims he acted in self-defense during an ongoing campus confrontation. His attorneys assert that the failure to secure an indictment supports his claim. During the incident, 19-year-old student Dejon Darrell Fox Jr. was shot and killed, and another student was also injured. If the grand jury didn't see enough evidence, does that point to a failure by prosecutors? Let's bring in our panel tonight. I'd like to introduce Dr. Julianne Malveaux, an economist and author. We also have Zipporah Dia, an employment specialist, joining us tonight. Thank you both for your time. Zipporah, we can start with you. When you hear about this case at KSU, what comes to mind?
Definitely thinking of just, I go to Howard right now, and thinking of that safety of what happens on these campuses, and just knowing how things are going with these individuals. I definitely think that in thinking of HBCU students and how it's becoming even more dangerous, and these shootings are happening more frequently, or violence is happening, like the shooting that happened at Howard during homecoming. Black institutions are less protected, and students are having to live with this trauma. So I think that we just need to be very aware of how the grand jury declining to indict impacts individual safety at HBCUs for the future. If this happened on a white campus, would there be charges? I think there may be some differences, and families are asking those questions.
And Dr. Malveaux, I guess, what message does this send to students and parents of students at HBCUs? Are you muted? Unfortunately, we can't hear you. No, what we'll have you do is shut down and restart, and we will take a break, and we'll be right back, and we will hopefully have our full panel to be able to weigh in on all the topics that we have for you tonight on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Coming up next, an Atlanta Choice delivered a holiday miracle to families drowning in medical debt. The pastor of Spirit and Truth Church will be here to talk about why he wanted to spread $1.5 million in holiday cheer for Christmas. And your support is so critical to everything that we do. You can support us via Cash App using the Stripe code. There it is on the bottom left hand of your corner of your screen. You can also help us with credit cards. Use the same thing. PayPal's R Martin Unfiltered, Venmo's RM Unfiltered, Zelle at RolandSMartin.com, rolling at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. If you're old school, send a check and money order. They're all payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered, P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Our goal is to raise $1 million by December 31st, and we would truly appreciate all of your support. And we'll be right back. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
If in this country right now, you have people get up in the morning and the only thing they can think about is how many people they can hurt, and they got the power, that's the time for mourning.
For better or worse, what makes America special, it's that legal system that's supposed to protect minorities from the tyranny of the majority.
We are at a point of a moral emergency. We must raise a voice of outrage. We must raise a voice of compassion. And we must raise a voice of unity.
We are not in a crisis of party versus party. We are in a crisis of civilization, a human rights crisis, and a crisis of democracy itself. And guess what? You've been chosen to make sure that those that would destroy, those that would hate, don't have the final say, and they don't ultimately win.
Hey y'all, welcome to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network and hosted by myself, Bria Baker, and my good sis, Jamira Burley. We are just two millennial women tackling everything at the intersection of politics, gender, and pop culture.
And we don't just settle for commentary. This is about solution-driven dialogue to get us to the world as it could be and not just as it is.
Watch us on the Black Star Network, so tune in to The Other Side of Change.
Are you ready for the holidays? This week on A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie, we're talking about all things anxiety and the holidays, whether it's performance anxiety, presence versus presence, making certain that everybody in your space understands the boundaries and how to respect your home. This week, we're talking about those things that will allow you to have a peaceful holiday season.
It really is not about perfection. It's really about, the house feeling warm and cozy and peaceful.
You don't have to like everybody, but what you can do is be cordial in those environments.
That's all this week on A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie here on Black Star Network.
Melanie Campbell, National Coalition on Black Civic Participation and Black Women's Roundtable. And we are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered all day, every day, 24/7. Spread the word.
Well, 1 in 12 adults, or 20 million Americans, carry over $220 million in medical debt. One Georgia church is easing the financial burden for over 1,000 families this Christmas. Atlanta's Spirit and Truth Church just erased $1.5 million in debt for families across 4 counties. Pastor Mark Moore Jr. partnered with RIP Medical Debt for his holiday miracle. He joins us now to tell us more about how he was able to pull it off. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Tell us about medical debt and why this was so important for you.
Well, unfortunately, medical debt is the number one cause of bankruptcy in the United States of America. And when we look at what this administration has enacted from a policy perspective, we know that premiums are about to skyrocket. at the turn of the year. And so we wanted to really just take advantage of this opportunity to be the hands and feet of Jesus and to meet tangible needs to really give people hope at the holidays.
And tell us how you were able to form the partnership.
Well, you know what? The Bible says that my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. And so looking at the landscape of just the country and our community here in Metro Atlanta, we did the work, we did the research, and we discovered Undo Medical Debt, formerly RIP Medical Debt, a phenomenal company that really purchases debt pennies on the dollar and eradicates it through our liberal giving and our generosity. And so we resuscitated that relationship. We partnered with them before in another iteration before we were a church. And we called them up, started the conversation, raised the funds, and we were able to help a lot of people.
And tell us more about how you were able to raise the money.
You know what? The generosity is our privilege. That's one of our core values. And so as a giving church, God has really blessed us. We've grown in the last 2.5 years from nothing to over 3,700 members, 4 locations, 3 in Metro Atlanta, 1 in Detroit. And with that growth, with that momentum, with that excitement, we've been able to really build the faith of our people and really try to draw a parallel between what we do with our giving and what we're able to do with our impact. And so I'm fully persuaded that when people can see a compelling vision and when they see the fruit of their giving, they have no problem giving more.
Tell us about how you were able to decide who could participate in this program and actually get some of their medical debt cleared.
Well, thankfully, we did not have to make that decision. I did not want that pressure. And so Undo Medical Debt, they handle the selection process. And the way it works is you purchase the debt based on county. And so because of HIPAA laws and things of that nature, I have no idea who it was or what the bill was for, if it was an ambulance ride or ER visit. We have no idea. We just know that there is this many millions of dollars in Georgia, and this many hundreds of thousands in this county, and this many tens of thousands in this county. And so we're able to do just a sweeping purchase and forgive it. And really, honestly, I think that makes it even more just pure, for lack of a better word, because it's not as if we're helping out our friends, our family. Tell your cousin, send her bills over. We have no idea who it is. And so it's really just a blessing, an unexpected blessing, dare I say. And so the partnership handles Undo Medical Debt. They handle the who. We just made it possible by being the how.
Well, let's bring in our panel tonight. We'll start with Dr. Malveaux. And do you have any questions for the pastor?
First of all, I want to commend him. As he said, significant numbers of adults have medical debt. It's preventing them from moving on to other aspects of their life. It's a ding on their credit, which means that they're trying to buy a house, whatever they're trying to do. It's really shackling them. So I want to really commend him for doing this and to just really thank you and your congregation for doing this. Now, my question around this is, you talked about how many families, et cetera. Are there particular hospitals that you've uncovered that perhaps are enforcing medical debt unfairly? In other words, hospitals have the ability also to write off medical debt, especially when people are indigent, with their compelling circumstances, but often they don't, and then interest piles up on that debt. Have you identified any real bad actors in this situation?
Well, you know what, Doctor? Unfortunately, everything you said is true, unfortunately. But we have not been able to identify or uncover any bad actors, as you say. We have really just tried to take a macro lens at the city of Atlanta, the Metroplex. And regardless if it was this hospital or that hospital or clinics or whatnot, we really just tried to go and target just the need. And I'll let smarter minds than mine try to figure out how we can fix it in a more radical way. But we've just really been focused on trying to get that pressure off of people's neck with all that's going on in the world and in our communities and just upheaval. If it's one less thing that they can worry about, that's certainly been our mission and our plan.
Zipporah, do you have any questions for the pastor?
Yes. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Since this partnership was so successful, do you have any plans for future partnerships or other ways that you plan on helping your congregation and the individuals in the Metro Atlanta area to, just do things that may relieve some of that burden that people are experiencing during these tough times?
Without question, without hesitation, without delay. I think that unfortunately, with so much upheaval and unrest and uncertainty and fear, oftentimes the question is raised, where is the church? What is the church doing? And especially in particular, let's be honest, the Black church. And so I think that these are opportunities to answer that question in a positive and say, hey, the church is right here. We know, certainly we here on Roland Martin Unfiltered understand that the Black church has been pivotal and integral at every iteration of this nation's progress and path. And so we really just want to do our part, whether it's medical debt again next year or, other creative avenues. Our church, we're very, very proud. We're only 2.5 years old, but we've been able to give away full ride scholarship to HBCU. We've been able to give away cars to families that needed them. We've been able to feed over 100,000 people. And so every week our food pantry is open. So we're always looking for tangible ways to be the hands and the feet of Jesus. Sometimes churches are wanting to preach to people and we fail to forget or fail to realize that Jesus met physical needs first in so many cases before he met spiritual needs. And so we want to preach to people and we don't realize that they could hear our message better if their stomach wasn't growling. So we're doing our best to try to find creative ways and outlets and partnerships to meet physical needs. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
So many other churches could take notes from you. Pastor Mark Moore Jr. from Spirit and Truth in Atlanta. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And we will have so much more coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered. We'll be right back here on the Black Star Network.
If in this country right now, you have people get up in the morning and the only thing they can think about is how many people they can hurt, and they got the power, that's the time for mourning.
For better or worse, what makes America special, it's that legal system that's supposed to protect minorities from the tyranny of the majority.
We are at a point of a moral emergency. We must raise a voice of outrage. We must raise a voice of compassion. And we must raise a voice of unity.
We are not in a crisis of party versus party. We are in a crisis of civilization, a human rights crisis, and a crisis of democracy itself. And guess what? You've been chosen to make sure that those that would destroy, those that would hate, don't have the final say, and they don't ultimately win.
Hey y'all, welcome to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network and hosted by myself, Rhea Baker, and my good sis, Jamira Burley. We are just two millennial women tackling everything at the intersection of politics, gender, and pop culture.
And we don't just settle for commentary. This is about solution-driven dialogue to get us to the world as it could be and not just as it is.
Watch us on the Black Star Network, so tune in to The Other Side of Change.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Godfrey, the funniest dude on the planet. And you're watching
Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Welcome back. The Supreme Court stop the Trump administration from deploying National Guard troops in Chicago. The decision leaves in place a lower court ruling blocking the deployment and could influence similar legal challenges in other Democratic-led cities. The Trump administration argues the National Guard is needed to protect federal personnel and property during immigration enforcement operations. Well, the issue is sparking a broader legal fight. 23 states, led by Republican attorney generals, support the administration's claim that the president has broad authority to deploy the Guard. 22 states, led by Democrats, are backing challenges to those deployments. Let's bring in our panel tonight. And Deborah, we'll start with you. What does the Supreme Court's refusal to intervene signal about presidential power?
Well, I think that it gave some level of checks and balance, at least for right now, right? I think that not deploying individuals to Chicago really is a little bit of a win when you think of that the National Guard has been deployed to other cities and they're militarizing Black cities. I think it's really important that we know that military force isn't social service. It doesn't solve any of the problems. So if we're not thinking about how our youth and our disabled and our marginalized communities are being impacted by deploying the National Guard, I think that's a bigger problem, right? I think we have to really look at these things from a macro lens and understand that you're sending the National Guard to these Black cities. And if we can have any wins with the National Guard already being in DC and other places, I think that this is maybe not a big win, but at least the temporary block that you can see the Supreme Court is actually doing what they should be doing, and that's giving some level of checks and balances when they haven't been doing that since this administration took their position.
Dr. Malveaux, what are your thoughts about the states being split almost entirely down the middle?
This is interesting because we saw the right-wingers, the Trump appointees, go with the liberals on this. This shows a chink in the Trump armor. It shows that even though he believes he can do whatever he wants to do, and he stated that time and time again, he has no regard for the law, no regard for the courts. Even this court has said, just a minute, buddy. And what we're seeing, DC, you can take DC off the table because he's in charge of the National Guard here in DC. But while I have the mic, I do want to shout out Pamela Smith, our outgoing chief of police, an amazing African-American woman who I won't say was railroaded out, but her position was made untenable because she simply wanted people to follow the law and follow the rules. So shout out to Pamela Smith, my soror, but more importantly, an amazing Black woman who led the DC police for more than 2 years and did it very well. Now in DC, like I said, in DC, it's a whole other story because he does run the National Guard in DC, but he doesn't run it in other states where he's tried to push. In Portland, Oregon, there's pushback. There's going to be pushback everywhere. What we're really doing here is creating a situation where the nation is divided among itself, where the cities are suing the states, are suing the feds. Meanwhile, what could we be doing? Let's look at the economic situation in this country right now. Let's look at the people. This is Christmas Eve. This is Christmas Eve. The Christ child was born in a manger. Guess what that means? He was unhoused. He was inadequately housed. We're people of our pastor. I'm so glad you had the brother on. Talk about the food banks. Our food banks are running out of food because so many people need food. We can go down the list, and instead we've got the intersigned warfare with one branch of government against the other because the leader of government refuses to follow the law. So I hope that while I decry the use of funds and energy and all that, I hope that other cities are emboldened by Governor Pritzker in Illinois and by Mayor Brandon in Chicago, emboldened to say, oh, no, not up in here. The verdicts are going to be mixed. We know that. We know that there's some persuading that has to be done on both sides. But the verdicts are going to be mixed. But as long as there is resistance, it's the right thing.
Well, I want to thank you both for weighing in tonight and for sharing your thoughts um, on this Christmas Eve. It was an absolute pleasure. Dr. Julianne Malveaux and Zabora Dia, thank you so much.
Well, thank you, sister. Have a happy holiday.
You have a wonderful.
Y'all have a wonderful Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Yes, and Happy New Year to you too. When we come back, we'll show you Roland's interview with Dr. Joseph Jones, the author of Black, Not Historically Black, Towards the Pan-Black College and University, an exploration of the historical and contemporary challenges faced by historically Black colleges and universities. So stay with us. You do not want to miss that conversation. Plus, we need your support to continue doing what it is that we do. And you can support us via Cash App using the Stripe code. It's on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen right now. You can also help us with credit cards. Use the same thing. PayPal's R Martin Unfiltered, Venmo's RM Unfiltered, Zelle at RolandSMartin.com, rolling at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. If you're old school, that's all right. You can send your checks and money orders payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered, P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Our goal is to raise $1 million by December 31st. And we really, really, really need your support to make that happen. Stay with us. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered here on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
Are you ready for the holidays? This week on A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie, we're talking about all things anxiety and the holidays, whether it's performance anxiety, presence versus presence, making certain that everybody in your space understands the boundaries and how to respect your home. This week, we're talking about those things that will allow you to have a peaceful holiday season.
It really is not about perfection. It's really about, the house feeling warm and cozy and peaceful.
You don't have to like everybody, but what you can do is be cordial in those environments.
That's all this week on A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie here on Black Star Network.
They said the quiet part out loud. Black votes are a threat, so they erased them. After the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act in 2013, Republican legislatures moved fast. New voter ID laws, polling place shutdowns, purges of black voters from the rolls. Trump's Justice Department didn't stop it, they joined in. In 2018, his DOJ backed Ohio's voter purge system, a scheme that disproportionately erased black voters. Their goal, erase black votes and political power. Yeah, that happened. These are the kinds of stories that we cover every day on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Subscribe on YouTube and download the Black Star Network app. Support fact-based independent journalism that centers African Americans and the issues that matter to our community.
If in this country right now, you have people get up in the morning and the only thing they can think about is how many people they can hurt, and they got the power, that's the time for mourning.
For better or worse, what makes America special, it's that legal system that's supposed to protect minorities from the tyranny of the majority.
We are at a point of a moral emergency. We must raise a voice of outrage. We must raise a voice of compassion. And we must raise a voice of unity.
We are not in a crisis of party versus party. We are in a crisis of civilization, a human rights crisis, and a crisis of democracy itself. And guess what? You've been chosen to make sure that those that would destroy, those that would hate, don't have the final say, and they don't ultimately win.
Clark Atlanta University political scientist and executive director of the W.E.B. Du Bois Southern Center for Studies in Public Policy, Dr. Joseph Jones believes historically Black colleges should strive to be what he calls pan-Black institutions. Dr. Jones sat down with Roland to discuss his book, Black, Not Historically Black, Towards the Pan-Black College and University, to explain what that means and how HBCUs could do just that.
So Joseph, I was talking to my frat brother at Talladega, Dr. Walter Kimbrough, and he was telling me about your book, Black, Not Historically Black, Towards the Pan-Black College and University. And one of the things that he was talking about that you write about are some of the struggles when it comes to leadership, board of trustees, and presidents. And I've talked to over the years a lot of presidents. I've covered a lot of folks getting fired, getting replaced, and it seems to be this is the constant tension that's always creating problems. Is that your assessment?
Yes, sir. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your book club. I'm a big fan of your work, and I know the advocacy that you put forth for Black colleges, and I just want to say thank you for allowing me on this platform. Yes, it is probably one of the kind of the worst kept secrets in higher education when we talk about what happens at Black colleges with regards to the turnover of leaderships. And what I talk about in my board is two tensions, the board of trustees and, of course, the leaders, the type of leaders that lead our institutions. And so most often it's a little bit of both. Most of the time it's the board of trustees. There's what I call a value mismatch, right, between the board and the actual president around how the college is going to move forward. Oftentimes board members want to hire presidents to do their bidding, as opposed to actually just allowing the president to actually go out and lead through his or her own vision. And then sometimes you get presidents who just want to do their own bidding. And that own bidding doesn't bode well for the whole entire institution, whether it's the students, whether it's the faculty and the staff. And so most often that is the case, Roland.
Well, it's like perfect example. I have often talked about from a PR standpoint, in terms of your communications departments, what is their job? And people have been shocked and stunned when I've said that if I put everything together, meaning if I put together running 3 Black newspapers, WVON radio, Tom Joyner Morning Show, 2 shows on TV One, and my show. It is rare, and I mean exceedingly rare, where I have been contacted about trying to get a university professor or an expert on the show. When you see Larry Sabato on CNN and he's got University of Virginia behind him and some of these other institutions, I mean, it's rare. When you see an HBCU professor on my show, we've called. And one of my criticisms is that I've said it. I said too many university PR departments, their focus is getting great PR for the president and not for the faculty of the university. And I've said this directly to presidents. I've said it to the heads of communications departments that how are you promoting your university if you're not even reaching out and connecting with Black-owned media? Right. I said that makes just no sense to me.
Right. And most often, sometimes it's intentional, right? Because sometimes presidents want to be the only person that is the face of the university, right? And so suppression does happen at institutions where faculty are told not to speak on behalf of the university. And so that dynamic also exists. But I think you're absolutely right. We're talking about an academic reputation. You're talking about, the intellectual pedigree of an institution that falls primarily on the faculty, right? And what the faculty are doing, what expertise they can offer to the world, to the community, and also, most importantly, to the students. If you're not showcasing that talent on your university, on your college, then you're doing a disservice, because there's a lot that we can offer.
Well, and I just think that well, a lot of people don't understand that, and this is also, I think, part of the issue. You'll get folks who say, "Oh, well, you went to a PWI, so you can't be criticizing HBCUs." It's not criticizing; it's called bolstering institutions.
Right.
But I also tell people, I said, "But you don't mind a PWI check?" I'm like, "You don't mind folk who went to PWIs writing checks?" And to me, it's a silly conversation because what I'm about is how do we strengthen Black institutions? So that means HBCUs, that means Black banks, that means Black-owned media, that means anything that are Black institutions. And so if you do not have a proper critical analysis of what is going on, then you're not going to be able to fix the problem.
And in many ways, we've kind of gotten away from that kind of public assessment or public criticism. And that's why, I framed the whole entire book in Du Bois's work, right? Because if you follow Du Bois's career, you look at his writings all throughout the turn of the 20th century, all the way into the mid of the 20th century, he was constantly and consistently providing feedback, criticism, and direction for Black colleges, right? And some of the critiques were scathing critiques. The time when he went back to his alma mater and gave a very, forceful speech, and the president ended up resigning, and because of what he was saying. And so, but one of the things I've been saying as I've been talking about this book is that we have to understand that there are two parts to the Black prophetic tradition, right? There's the external part where we talk about systems of oppression, we talk about white racism and patriarchy and all the things that kind of fall down on our community. But there's also an internal prophetic Black tradition where we bring ourselves and our people to the table of accountability. And so that's what I'm trying to do with this book, is for us to have an open conversation around the internal contradictions that exist in our institution. And a lot of folks have just said, you're airing your dirty laundry. No, because guess what? It's already out in the open. I mean, like I said, it's the worst kept secret in higher education.
Well, anytime somebody says airing your dirty laundry, I then say, when you file a lawsuit, that's public.
Right.
It's no different than when somebody says, if you're talking about hazing publicly. Well, when members get arrested and now charged, indicted, and convicted, that's now public. So this notion of airing dirty laundry to me is stupid. I still go back to, how do you strengthen an institution?
Right.
And I've sat down and had very deep discussions with boards of trustees, chairman of the boards, and other members about these things. And it's about how do you write these things. And then also, I was going back and forth with this loudmouth fool who was, you can't say anything because you don't criticize your alma mater, Texas A&M. I'm like, that's a damn lie. I said, I damn sure will. I said, but when you're facing a situation where our institutions do not have the endowments of PWIs, when we don't have the same, even as state schools, the same level of funding, things along those lines, that means we have to be even better caretakers of what we have. And I think that it's a problem when you see issues and they keep coming up. Like I've been dealing with St. Augustine's, and I'm like, I'm sorry, you can't keep telling me over and over and over again financial issues, things along those lines that have been going on for more than a decade. If you can't tell me, oh, that's solely because of this president or that president. No, that is an institutional problem.
Right. It comes down to culture. And so here's the consequence when we don't deal with these issues in a very public and honest way, is that those who are in power, those who are in the board or presidents, stay in power, and they continue to keep wreaking havoc at our institutions, right? And so it's important for us to deal with these things in a very honest and transparent way. And so that's what I'm trying to do with this book, is to really, really, to get folks from alumni to students to faculty to staff members to just to affirm that what they're going through is not crazy. Because I mean, everywhere I go, I've had people contact me all over the United States who've read the book and have said, thank you. This is really, it has affirmed my experience. And I didn't know how to explain it or how to put language to what is happening. And it's happening at my institution. Now, I've been very clear in the book that the things that I talk about are very specific to private HBCUs, because most of my experience has been at private HBCUs. And so I try to make that very, very clear. But there have been several people at public HBCUs who have contacted me who could glean from the experiences.
Oh, yeah.
Critiques that out and said, yes, this happens here too.
Well, look, I mean, I remember when Austin Lane was fired as president of Texas Southern University. It was beyond idiotic. They fired him. The reasons given were ridiculous. They end up, he countersues. They end up having to pay a settlement, having to pay out his contract. Okay. And then literally a week later, he becomes the chancellor, the provost at Southern Illinois University. And I'm sitting in Carbondale, and I'm sitting here going, okay. And literally, I've talked to numerous people who said to me, I would love to continue to giving back or working. I've had people say, I would love to go work to help build HBCUs, but they literally said to me, I cannot deal with the bullshit.
Right. And it exists, and it absolutely exists. And you know, that kind of, one of my chapters is called Culture, Not Dysfunction, right? Where I talk about organizational culture at HBCUs. And so, and that part, it has such a very dire effect on anybody who's at the institution, from staff, from faculty to students. And it's debilitating. It is frustrating, because some of the most simplest things that you think we ought to be able to do with excellence, we can't. We simply can't, because systems are broke, policies are not rendered or followed. There are no systems of accountability. And so, as I said before, those people who are causing the havoc are not exposed, and they end up staying there and running off all the people who are high performing.
This is what I've said in my critiques of boards. And this is not specific just to HBCUs. I've said this about Black churches. I've said this about many of our Black organizations. And that is, there are people who are on many of these boards who have no business being on the boards. They've never had any P&L responsibility in their jobs. They've never sat at the table of power. So now all of a sudden they're in a position of power, and they really have no idea what the hell they are doing. And if they have sat at the table of power, let's say they own a company or they work in a place, they've been dealing with small amounts of money. Reverend Dr. Floyd Flake once told me, he said, Roland, he said, when we were doing $2 to $3 to $5 million deals, I would take my deacons with me to meetings with the banks. He said, when we started doing $40, $50 million deals, he said, I ain't bring the deacons. He said, I had somebody on my side who spoke the same language as the folk on the other side, because I needed somebody on my side to explain what they were talking about. But also, I need the people on the other side to know I got somebody on my side who knows what the hell they're talking about. Yeah. And that to me is so critically important. And unfortunately, there are people, you look at their resume, you like, how in the hell are you sitting on a board of trustees?
Yeah, and you know, you're right. It happens at Black colleges, it's happened at Black churches, but specifically when you start talking about colleges, universities, it's very profound, right? You know, one of the things I tried over the past 6 to 9 months, I've been trying to write companion pieces to each one of the chapters in the book. And so I wrote a piece about maybe 6 or 9 months ago in Diverse Issues of Higher Education. And the piece was called A Case for Board Academic Acumen, right? And what I was basically arguing is that, you know, you have a lot of board of trustee members who come to institutions of higher education and know nothing about higher education, right? They know nothing about academics. They know nothing about student affairs. They only understand how the money comes in to a university. They don't understand the audits for financial aid. They don't understand the audits, you know, the big audits. And so how is it that they're there that can provide the direction and the governance for an institution where they don't even have the basic understanding of how the institution of higher education works? It would be like me being on a board of, I don't know, Ford Motor Company, right? Like, I'm a professor of political science. Like, there's not much I could actually add to the conversation because I don't have an expertise knowledge into automobiles. But so many of our institutions have, most of them are pastors, businessmen.
But here's the deal, though. You don't necessarily have to.
Who don't have the credentials to go.
Right. And see, but using your example, there are individuals who serve on corporate boards, and their expertise may not be in automobiles,
right?
But their expertise is in how do you run large institutions,
right?
Finances, things along those lines, and so that's the piece there. So there are a lot of people who, again, who are like perfect example. You mentioned automotive, so a friend of mine, he's a Kappa, Mark Tatum. He's the number 2 at the NBA. He's on the board of directors of General Motors.
Right.
But when you are working in systems and things along those lines, that is the expertise that you're bringing, because you're bringing that knowledge and things along those lines. So to your point, you place people, like perfect example, Dr. Ruth Simmons, who ran Ivy League institutions, then was a president and privy in them. She has sat on corporate boards, but she's bringing a level of expertise that can be beneficial to that organization. That's what the whole point is. What expertise are you bringing? What critical analysis are you bringing to the institution? I dare, and this is not me trying to get on anybody's board, but I dare say, because of the positions that I've been in, because of the ability to ask questions, because of take the National Association of Black Journalists, I've been a 3-time board member, now running for a 4th time. There are things that you are able to see, questions you're able to ask, and a knowledge base that you can bring to an institution that can actually help shepherd an institution. But when you literally have no idea what the hell are you talking about, you're like, how is this person on a board? And the problem at the private institutions is that, unlike the state, where you have a hierarchy, at private institutions, in many ways, the board is the final step. And you like, again, I look at St. Augustine's. Like, how do you get the same thing down in Bethune-Cookman and others? How in the hell do you get rid of folks who don't know what they're doing when the board is deciding amongst themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you're absolutely right. And one of the things that I talk about in my chapter, Leadership, Not Misleadership, is talk about, private HBCUs embracing, like I said, systems of accountability. Like, every board member ought to be evaluated every year, not internally, externally. Like, there ought to be a commitment to making sure that board members don't stay on the board for 10 or 15 years, like a lot of private HBCUs, where people just stay on and never leave. But they're assessed every year to make certain that they're actually doing the job to support the president and to support the institution, and not just stir a mess.
I was talking to one chair of board of trustee, and I asked him, I said, do you have a minimum amount of money that your board members must raise? And the board chair told me there used to not be one, and she made one, and I was like, oh, I'm sorry, that's too low. I said at a bare minimum, I said every board member should be required to contribute or bring in $10,000 to $20,000.
Yeah.
And she was like, woo. I said no.
Yeah.
I said I'm sorry. I said within the framework of an institution, if you are an individual who sits on the board of trustees, that's nothing. That's not a lot of money. And I think this is also part of the problem. Again, I go back to when you're not used to sitting at the table of power. I use an example again when I was on the board of the National Association of Black Journalists. We were in the board meeting, it was during a break, and there was this big hoopla. Now I'm reading something. Now I can overhear the conversation. So one of the board members came to me and said, Roland, you okay? I'm like, what do you mean? You hear good news? I was like, now I heard it, but I really wasn't paying attention. This organization, this company gave us $10,000. I went, oh, okay.
Right.
And they were like,
yeah,
what's wrong? I said, I don't mean no disrespect.
Right.
I said, but I'm not gonna get excited. I said, I appreciate them becoming a sponsor. I said, I'm not about to lose my mind over $10,000.
Right.
I said, now, if you told me somebody gave us $100,000, $250,000, $1 million,
Right.
and you're gonna get a response out of me. But then I did this here. Then I looked around the room. I think at the time we had 18 board members. Maybe it was 15. It was 15 or 18. I looked around the room and I said, other than me, maybe 2 other people on that board had ever negotiated a 6-figure salary.
Right.
$100,000.
Right.
And I went, there you go. Now, to the people who are watching and listening, that's not being arrogant. That's not being elitist. That's not being cocky. But the point is, when you are in a position of power, I'm sorry, 10,000 is not going to move you.
Right.
And that's and so it's state of mind. So when so if an individual looks at, and again, I'm appreciative of any donation, of any support, but a person in that position has to understand, I'm not about to jump up and down and holler and scream over 10 grand. And again, that goes to the type of person that you want on your board and the expectation of what you want them to bring in and how you want them pushing the president to also the kind of dollars that person should be bringing in.
Yeah, yeah. And it also speaks to a broken system of institutional advancement as well, right? Because, if you have a really, really good institutional advancement office that is cultivating, right, that is actually practicing good stewardship, coupled with the CFO who is running good audits. Because here's the thing, and then I know you know this, Roland, like when big corporations or big foundations or people with any kind of means, before they give money to any institution, they're going to do their due diligence. They're going to look at your audits. They're going to look at your 990s. They're going to look at your financials, and they're going to say, what can this institution handle, right?
Yes. What is the capacity? What is the capacity of the institution? Can this institution handle $10 million?
Right, exactly.
$5 million, $1 million, or you know what? All y'all can really handle is 5 or 10.
5 or 10, exactly. So we end up getting the 5 or 10.
But the flip side is, again, right here, a lot of our people, that's all we also ask for.
Exactly. Absolutely. And so, because that same company may be giving you $5,000 or $10,000, but they're giving another institution $150,000, $200,000, and they're happy to give you that 10 because it's nothing to them, right? But it comes down to the kind of mindset, and it comes down to, like I said, the systems that are broken. And kind of going back to your first question around leadership, right, and the leadership turnover. But what happens most often with leadership turnover is that every office has a leadership turnover. So when the president leaves, that means the vice president of academic affairs most likely leaves, the person over institutional advancement leaves. So you can't have a place that has a consistent way of doing things, because people come in and they reimagine, or they turn it into whatever they want to do. And so, and also corporations and entities, they look at stability as well.
Yes, and I want to actually I want to go there. Actually, put a pin in that one, because you were talking about early in the book when you mentioned churches.
Yeah,
and this is a huge problem that I have, and I understand that a lot of it's because of a lot of churches created a lot of HBCUs.
Yeah.
I fundamentally believe, and I'm about to make some people mad, but I don't give a damn because I'm used to it. I have a huge problem where HBCUs, and let me expand this, also Black organizations, treat the president like he's the senior pastor.
Yes.
I'm sorry. The president's wife ain't the first lady.
Yes.
Now, it doesn't mean that the president's wife or the president's husband, because you have female presidents, can't serve in a capacity. But again, when you treat the president like he's the senior pastor,
right.
What people don't understand is the senior pastor in lots of churches is the be all to end all.
Right. Right, exactly.
Has final authority.
Yeah.
The president of a university actually does not.
Mm-mm.
There is shared accountability and shared decision making. I just think that mindset also plays a part in this, that you are elevating this person above and beyond everyone else, and everyone's role is to serve the senior pastor.
And to take that analogy even further, treating presidents like they're CEOs, right? And so colleges and universities are not businesses, right? Where they're not. And so to your point, and I think it's a very salient point, a lot of people don't fully understand how different universities and colleges are, and the shared governance model that goes into it, where the faculty have a role, right? Where the alumni have a voice, right? Where students should have a voice in how the institution should be doing certain things. Like, there are so many constituencies that are involved in an institution of higher education. But if you bring somebody on with a senior pastor mind, or dare I say a CEO mind, where it's like, I'm a CEO and whatever I say goes, then you're going to have these kind of breakdowns and this misalignment and all the foolishness that goes on.
You mentioned stability, and that people really don't get. They really don't get that. Because so what ends up happening is, and again, I've covered this way too many times.
Yeah.
To your point, president gets fired, president leaves.
Yeah.
And then a whole litany of people, their whole team also leaves. Now what ends up happening is, now you're starting over.
Right.
Folks don't know who's doing what, and now it's constant. When Fisk, I was in the Bahamas. I was there for the Boulay convention. I guess it's 2022. Maybe it was 23. And I got word that Fisk had fired President Van Newkirk Sr. So I posted a video. I had great respect for President Newkirk. I was a scholar in residence at Fisk, so I did a video. About 15 minutes after I posted that video, I get a DM from Fisk saying the board chair wanted to speak to me. I said, all right, fine. So I get this email, and board chair says he's an alpha, he's Boulay, and I'm like, none of that means nothing to me, because I'm talking about the issue.
Yeah.
And he says to me that, the criticism that I had, this is the kind of stuff that can hurt our universities over a long period. I said, no, you having 7 presidents in 22 years.
That part, yes.
Hurt our institution. And one of those presidents was there 7 years. So you had 6 presidents in 15 years.
Right.
I was like, that's the problem.
Absolutely.
Not my criticism.
Right.
And that's the thing that people have to recognize. When you have constant, and again, corporations, foundations, and others are paying attention. When you have 2 and 3 and 4 CFOs, and you're constantly take a new dean coming in, new dean going out over and over and over, that signals to everybody that's an unstable institution, and I am not willing to make an investment in that institution because they have no stability.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that instability creates, the presidential turnover that we've been seeing over and over and over. Why we can't get right retention rates, why we can't get right graduation rates, why we can't get right, fundraising goals. And a lot of people just don't understand, like, stability is the key to continuity and success for any institution of higher education. But I'll just add something else into this conversation, and I'm not sure if you're going to go there or not, but I talk about this in my book, and that's how we treat each other at Black colleges, right? Because part of the past 10
see, he don't understand. Literally, that was just highlighted. You right. Unprofessional. Literally, I'm talking about. It was literally just highlighted. You said unprofessional behavior is often the first sign of dysfunction at an HBCU.
Yeah.
Over the years, I've witnessed countless examples, from unanswered phones and emails to outright rudeness in offices.
Yeah.
The lack of professionalism within an organization culture fosters dysfunction. An
Yes.
executive coach once told me that institutions are perfectly aligned to get the results they work for. And if unprofessional behavior is the norm, we cannot expect HBCUs to rise to meet today's challenges and expectations. And what happens here is, and I've heard this from way too many people, you see these posts on social media.
Yeah.
There are individuals who graduated 20, 25 years ago. And to this day, they're like, I ain't giving a damn dollar because of how the financial aid office treated me, how the cafeteria people. So how you treat people is literally impacting an institution decades later because people, they ain't forgot.
Yeah. And and that is so real, like the trauma and just the hurt of actually going to an institution and going through out of that. A lot of students leave out like, I'm not giving back. I'm not going to be a part of the alumni association. One of the things that I've had to grow and mature into, and I try to teach my students and other fellow alums, is that we've got to get to a point where we've got to separate the individuals from the institution, right? So it wasn't, the institution that did this to you, was that financial aid officer. It was that, it was that faculty member, right? Because
but I will say this though. If I am consistently seeing that, and the institution has been apprised of the problem,
yes,
and it hasn't been fixed,
yes,
that's when it becomes systemic and it's an institution problem.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. It's both and. But to your earlier point around that individual who had that one experience, or maybe two, but then they just couched the whole entire institution. And so, for those of us who are really committed to Black colleges and universities, like there has to be a kind of a come to Jesus moment with alums and institutions to get this right, right? That means we have to out loud in very public kind of way talk about these things in an open space to deal with them, to move forward. And I know there are a bunch of people who are willing to come back if there is one of these kind of moments where we can actually talk about it. But one of the things I think that's very offensive is that you do all of this injustice to folk and then you act like nothing happened. And then you come and you ask me for some money. Like that is just very disingenuous. And you're not going to get people to be engaged or involved in institutions when clearly you can't even admit the injustice that went on.
The thing that I think, what people have to understand is that the desire is for our institutions to not survive, but
thrive.
And that is a state of mind.
Yes.
Survive. We want them to thrive, not survive.
Yeah.
And when you talk about systems, it immediately struck me when we had remember we started News One Now at TV One, and it was a rush to get us on the air. And I remember the executive producer we had wanted to hire her own team, no real input from everybody else, which I had a problem with because I knew the kind of people we were going to need. See, when I had run 3 Black newspapers, and you have to have a different view of when you have limited resources, but you're trying to do something big. So I had experience in that space.
Right.
And my deal was you got to hire the right people who understand coming in what we have and what we don't have.
Right.
And that I think that EP may have lasted 3 months, maybe even shorter. And then new EP comes in. But the problem is the system that was put in place was really one born out of dysfunction. And patchwork was made as opposed to completely redoing the system. Now, what I'm trying to get people to understand is, again, I mentioned the 3 Black papers for a reason. I came into places that required me to completely gut the system and to put in an entire new system. There was another paper I worked at that already had a good system. I had to augment that system. And so it requires different types of leadership.
Right.
The problem is that what ended up happening was the staff made now I need people listening to hear what I'm saying. The staff made the dysfunctional system work but at its core, it was still dysfunctional.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
leaders have to step back and go, okay, this is actually dysfunctional.
Right.
Now I got to still keep the trains running. So now, how do I overhaul a system piecemeal,
Yeah.
as opposed to coming in and completely overturning it? And now I'm actually dealing with chaos.
Right. Right.
That requires real leadership.
Yeah, yeah. And part of what I say in my first chapter on leadership is that, you know, a president who takes on an institution ought to have some evidence of leadership development, right? Taking some time to learn how to actually be a leader, because you're right. That is such a very important function of just leading any institution of any kind of.
And have you done it before?
Right, exactly. Show me evidence of that.
I remember.
And what prioritize it. Like, we see all these institutions. I mean, we see all these strategic plans. Like, the number one thing for your strategic plan should be organizational culture, like, and systems of accountability and policy. Like, if you don't prioritize it and work on it every day, you can't expect the system to change, right? Regardless of how good your plan is.
I remember when I ran the Chicago Defender, and again, I tell people all the time, running 3 black newspapers, and this is my 13th black-owned media institution. Is very similar to HBCUs.
Oh yeah,
it's very similar. And I remember when I took over the Chicago Defender, and I came in, and at first I was a consultant, and we're in a meeting, and the person who was the managing editor was really perturbed, and I'm sitting here going, and was really just like not with this whole deal. It was asking questions, and I was trying to be very judicious, trying to be very nice about it. And then finally, well, if this happens, you know, who's in charge? Who makes the final call? And finally, I was like, me. I mean, I was trying to be respectful of the position. And so then the person literally went on a 2-week vacation when I started. And when she got back, wasn't no job there. Because I had to accept, the paper had lost money for 20 straight years.
Right.
They were over budget.
Right.
It was called, the nickname of the paper was called the Chicago Offender. That was literally the nickname, because they had so many errors and everything. Yeah. And it was like, and so I remember I started, it was a Sunday night, and the board had a meeting next day, and the guy he was and it was so funny too, because he was a former publisher, was a fellow Alpha brother, but was awful at the job. And he goes, so this system, I don't know why he was talking like he was British. I was like, dude, you're not British.
Yeah.
So this system you're talking about, you know, how long is it going to take for you to institute this system? And I went, it's been in place 16 hours.
Right.
What? I said, man, listen. I said, I studied your whole system. But see, what they didn't realize was 3 years earlier, I was a part of a team that was looking to buy the paper, and they flew me and Mike Price, God rest his soul, in to assess the paper. So I'd already seen all the financials. I'd seen the infrastructure. I'd seen everything. I crafted a plan of action to take over that paper 3 years earlier. So when I walked in, I wasn't actually new.
Yeah.
For 3 years earlier, I had put together an entire plan on how to turn it around.
Right.
And again, that is when you're hiring presidents or when you're hiring people, when you're walking into, frankly, a dumpster fire, no, I got to hire folk who have expertise in putting out dumpster fires. Now, this is the key that I think, again, to your point about how long do you stay. Now, once you have turned a corner, you now have to go from, I brought in people to put fires out.
Right.
Now I have to bring in people who can build.
Right.
And then there's another corner that you turn, because once I put a fire out and I rebuilt it, now I got to hire people who can maintain it. That's not necessarily the same people that put the fire out or rebuilt it.
Absolutely. And that knows, but that takes a person who's a leader who understands and discerning, right, in regards to those skill sets that person will come in, and a clear vision to implement it just the way that you talked about. But most often, and you know this, Roland, is that, when presidents come in, they bring their homies, right? They bring their networks, they bring the fraternity brothers, the sorority sisters, and whoever else they want to do, and they put them in the jobs that they have no competency in, right? And that creates a whole nother, toxic stew of dysfunction at institutions of higher education. And so, for board members, I mean, if any out there listening, when you're, a lot of this is ceded to search firms where they bring candidates. But if a board is not very clear about the very specific things that a president needs for their institution, and if they cede that authority to a search firm, then it's going to be derailed.
But also the type of person you need. It's so funny you mentioned a search firm. When a search firm interviewed me for the Chicago Defender. Mm-hmm. And then when they brought in two of the executives, they all three of them looking at me and they go, "Well, we're confused by something." I was like, "Okay, what are you confused by?" They said, every other person who we've interviewed for this job has laid out to us that they need to increase the editorial budget by $500,000. I said, "You shouldn't hire any of those people." And they went, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, I can't ask you for an increase until I've come in and assess the current situation."
That's right.
You then allow me to use the budget the way I see it. So I have to stress test your system to then know where the gaps are that will then determine what the increase is.
Right.
And man, they looked at me like I was crazy. Now, what was a trip is the brother who owned the search firm, it was probably 18 months later. He goes, "I got to be honest with you." He goes, "I didn't think you were the best fit. I didn't think you were and he's like, "But it's amazing how it's worked out." And I literally was looking at him like, "Because you didn't know what the hell you were doing." Exactly. I was literally like, "Dude, you ain't had no experience running a media company. Just because you head of a search firm don't mean you know the institution."
Right.
And that's the thing. And so again, to your point, a search firm is looking at a sheet of tangibles.
That's it.
You check out this. Yeah. But you have to then listen to that person to first know, has this person studied our system? Have they identified our weaknesses based upon their own research, and then offer a plan of action to fix it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And any good candidate who doesn't do their research on an institution, and that is studying the 990, studying the audits, talking to alumni, understanding the history, all of those things, looking at the previous strategic plans, what goals were met, why weren't they met? The offices, like it needs to be a deep dive into the system itself, and not just the way of just me coming in there trying to flaunt my credentials about what I've done in regards to my own, stellar career, whatever it is. It's what are you doing in regards to show me that you really understand what you're about to go into, and you understand what it takes to kind of move it forward. What is your plan of action, like you said?
I believe in modeling. And who would you say, if two or three, it could be more, but two or three institutions that really should serve as a model for others to study? Doesn't mean they're perfect, but to study, learn from, to say, hey, they're doing this right. You should really be emulating and trying to do what they're doing.
Right. So there are a couple that come to mind. I mean, I think the most obvious one is spelling. I mean, they seem to have it down. And any good private institution, I think they're very, very clear. They invite people to come lead them, right? And their business, their culture, right? And so an institution who is aligned like that is always going to continue on, because
so what you're saying is, hold on. What you're saying is, So first, what you're saying is Spelman has refined their culture
Yes.
to the point that we don't need you to come in to create a culture.
Right. Exactly.
What we need you to do
Yes.
is to come in and strengthen the culture.
Right. Exactly.
Go ahead.
And so any institution, so I look at Spelman, and I believe that's one of the reasons why they're number one, because they're very clear. But another one that a lot of people don't think about is Claflin University. Right?
Yep.
I think is one of those hidden gems in South Carolina that, you know, the presidential transition, the previous president before, the younger brother who's there, whose name escapes me right now.
Yep.
But they've been punching way above their weight class, and they keep rising up in the ranks, which tells me that there's something right going there. You know what I'm saying? There's no.
Well, one of the things that's going right there is they have the highest alumni giving of any institution, which means that what the administration is doing, again, culture. That alumni says we believe in what you're doing, and what it also means is that they ain't gonna play around if you start screwing up.
Absolutely. And then also, I mean, just to be selfish and to be parent, I got to say Clark Atlanta University. I believe what President George T. French is doing in regards to revitalizing our focus on our graduate education, pushing us forward to move from, and I think this is a conversation we're having now, from just like Howard did, from R2 to an R1, the focus on data science, the increase of graduate education, and then really buying into our identity. You know, Atlanta University was the first graduate, you know, HBCU, a Black college in the nation. And we have an intellectual pedigree that rivals none among our Black colleges. And so really tapping into that and saying that this is our foundation, this is our history, here's what we need to do forward. Doesn't mean that we're perfect, but it means that we're moving towards trying to get to that level of a Spelman. So.
Well, also, I think what's critically important, if you look at Spelman's board,
absolutely,
again, that is also important. You don't have, frankly, BS folks sitting on that board, and you got folk on that board who bring in money.
Yes.
And by evidence by that one family that donated a massive amount of money.
Yes.
I mean, but that's a part of this whole deal, having the right people who are on your board of trustees.
And a lot of people thought that took probably decades of cultivation, right? Like that just didn't happen in just, you know, a couple of years, whatever. Like that family was on Spelman's board for years, and they seen the continuity, they seen the strong leadership. And so it was probably not even a hard decision to actually vest into an institution when you've been there to be able to do it. But I also have to uplift who I believe who set off the whole entire, I think, evolution of Spelman, and that is Janetta Cole. What she was able to do back in the 80s with Spelman, with the Cosbys and all the other folk, like that, I think is when, you know, Spelman began to start to separate from others. And that was just very, very good leadership, right?
Yep, absolutely. Last question. I ask this question of every author. That is, doing the research, doing the writing, what was your wow moment? Was there something that you came across where you were like, yo, that's crazy?
Yeah, you know, so I guess it would probably be the last chapter, right? Pan-Africanism, not ADOS. And you know, I think one of the things that, and because I shopped the book out to a bunch of people to be able to read, to get feedback on, and what I found to be, I think, my aha moment, and something that we really don't deal with in a very serious way at Black colleges, is this tension that we have with our diasporic brothers and sisters on the campus, right? From the Caribbean, from the continent, and how that bleeds into this kind of competition that we see that actually happens and plays out at PWIs. I've had plenty of colleagues who work at PWIs and talk about how, you know, their institutions would rather give, you know, scholarships to brothers and sisters from the continent or Nigeria than from brothers and sisters from North Carolina or, you know, or Alabama. But and really thinking through that, how do we forge partnerships with our brothers and sisters in the diaspora, and really thinking through that, you know, it became clear to me in writing that chapter and researching that chapter that we've really got to deal with this, because what's going to happen at mid-century and by 2050 is that Africa is going to be probably the most prominent and most significant continent on this country.
Well, first of all, 10% of the black population in the United States, right? I'm sorry. The fastest growing group among the black population in America right now are black immigrants.
Absolutely.
And then when you look at, and also this ain't nothing new of African leaders who went to HBCUs, Kwame Nkrumah. It's nothing different. I mean, look, Texas Southern University, significant number of Nigerians go to their pharmacy school.
Yes.
And so this is crazy.
Yes. But we don't, nobody really fully talks about that tension, right? It's just there. And one of the things I'm trying to push out is that we have got to be more intentional at Black colleges around making certain that we have these conversations, that we forge these relationships, that we forge these partnerships with our diasporic brothers and sisters so that we can thrive in by 2050, right? And you're right, we do have a history. I mean, the boys at Atlanta University, the Pan-African Congresses, I mean, you look all throughout the Black Power movement, the Civil Rights movement, Kwame Ture. I mean, all of these individuals came either from the Caribbean, and they came to Howard, they came to Clark Atlanta University, they came to all these places. But right now, I don't see a serious conversation around how do we build alliances. And if we don't do that right now in a very intentional way, then I fear what is happening is that this kind of anti-immigrationness that we're seeing from the administration is going to bleed into our communities and create wedges if it hasn't already done so.
Indeed. Folks, the book is Black, Not Historically Black, Towards the Pan Black College and University, Joseph L. Jones. Joseph, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
No, it's been a pleasure, my brother. I really appreciate you.
Well, that does it for us here on this Christmas Eve. Thank you so much for watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Have a good evening.